Critique is so limiting and emotionally draining.
Get rid of it. Box it off.
I can't save you.
I would call myself a Dan Gilroy fan. I love the movie Nightcrawler. And I also saw Dan Gilroy's second major motion picture starring Denzel Washington, Roman J. Israel Esquire. The opening credits to this movie are great. They reminded me of another movie called American Psycho. And so with the opening credits in this movie, I didn't know where the story was going to go. So I was intrigued from the very opening credits. We then transition and we see Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and he's going to an art gallery, and he goes in there and he's looking at some art, and we come across Hobo Man, and I was mesmerized by this because I've never seen a robot like this. It was scary, but it was interesting. But Jake Gyllenhaal's character didn't like it.
No originality. No courage. My opinion.
Then we meet Zoe Ashton's character, and I thought her character was very interesting as the movie progressed. When we were first introduced to her, I really didn't care. I thought she was kind of useless. But then in the middle section of the movie, there are some scenes where I feel her character is longing for love, right? She wants to be in love, but she always picks the wrong man. And there's an interesting line that she says at the beginning of the movie about artists and how they're in love with themselves and it's difficult to be in a relationship with them. But yet she doesn't practice what she preaches. And there's another interesting moment in here between Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Zoe Ashton's character. They were having sex and he's not looking at her. He's not engaged in the deed with her. So she wants to make eye contact with him. Yet he's looking at this painting and then a hand comes out of it, which we'll get to. We'll talk about that in a moment. But a hand comes out of the painting and it creeps him out. And so with that scene and seeing her character, it seems her character was longing for love, but she was looking for it in all the wrong places. And I got that from just her wanting to be very intimate because she's jumping between guys in this movie here too. Like she's with 3 different people in this movie. The beginning, someone breaks up with her. And then she's with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. Then she's with another character, and I won't spoil it, but then she's with another character, and something else happens. It's crazy. So she's longing for love, but she's doing it in the wrong way and with the wrong people. She has these really high standards, but she means well, I feel. And to me, I will say this. Sex is sacred, okay? There was one scene in this movie where I thought this because it's when Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Zoe Ashton's character first become intimate. And when they first become intimate, I was emotionally invested in that moment because I felt it. It's like they're hanging out, they smoke a little hash, they drinking, and it seems like, she's just using Jake Gyllenhaal's character as a rebound because she just broke up with somebody and she's drinking, intoxicated. One thing that leads to another. But, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I don't think he's that wasted. I think he's more in control than she is. I think she's in control. They know what they're doing. It's consensual sex. But then it's crazy though, because then he wants to be with her badly, but then she discovers something about him. I could see that they both really liked each other, and she was just mad at him, like, this is happening again, and she broke it off, and now she's with someone else. And he's mad about that. But we don't know if he's lying to her or telling the truth. But sex is sacred. When they first hook up, I was into it. I really thought at the beginning when they first hooked up, I thought that she was legitimately, I'm going to be with you, and then he wants to be with her. and I was into it, and it was very sensual. And it made me think like, yeah, sex is amazing. Sex is one of the best things ever. But I feel for me, it's only good when it's sacred. It's only fantastic when it's sacred. I have to be intimate with the person. I agree with what Prince said about sex.
Yeah, sexuality is not bad.
Yeah.
I'm talking about sexuality is very spiritual in nature, and that's a God-given gift too.
It's your life! Do with it whatever you damn well please!
Jake Gyllenhaal and Zoe Ashton's characters are interesting characters. They do go through development. Then by the end, I just feel like it all fizzles away because the movie has too much going on. We got Rene Russo in here, who is playing an interesting character. She is a former rock star, I guess. We see a lot of tattoos on her, well, not a whole lot, just a few that the movie showcases. John Malkovich's character in here is weird. I feel like John Malkovich's character serves no purpose here, but he does have some really good scenes. John Malkovich's character's introduction scene is great, and it was very funny. I will say this: if you've seen Bird Box, I've seen Bird Box, and he drinks a lot in that movie. John Malkovich's character drinks a ton of booze in Bird Box, and it was funny to see John Malkovich, after watching him in Bird Box, appear in this movie, and his intro scene is, "I want some water," or something like that. He's like, "Don't people around here drink water," or something. And I laughed my ass off because it's like, I just saw you in Bird Box and you wanted booze and now you trade it for water. It's like the same character from that movie, even, whatever. But John Malkovich was great in here with the extreme minimal amount of screen time that he had. Toni Collette is here, and Toni Collette, her character, I feel, is underutilized. By the end, I don't care. At the beginning, we see her and she's there and she's a snitch, she's a gossiper, and something happens and that's the end of it. And she deserved better because after watching her in Hereditary, she is Oscar worthy, damn it. We got Daveed Diggs. Daveed Diggs is in here. It was good to see him. I first saw him in Blind Spotting. He was great in this movie. There is one weird scene at the end with his character that I didn't understand. When something was going down, he's hanging out with this girl, and then they go to a bar and she's like, "I want to leave," and he says, "I want to stay," and then they separate, and it's like there's no real excuse as to why he's acting flaky with her. Like, just it seems like his something grasped him. And what I don't want to spoil anything, but there's an entity that is present in this movie. When the movie starts, I don't know where it's going to go. So that keeps me interested. And I'm interested in a couple of the characters and their relationships. Not all of them, but some of them. And the movie goes along. It's pretty interesting. And then there's something that happens that doesn't come out of left field, but you don't expect it. And it happens, and at first it's interesting. It's great. The visuals to it are great. The editing, the pacing of it is great. So it doesn't come out of left field. But then it goes along, and then it infects the characters. And that's when I'm no longer invested in their personal relationships. Because now we have this entity affecting these personal relationships I was invested into at the beginning, and then by the end something happens and I'm no longer invested anymore. It's like there's two totally different narratives in this movie. There's one where there's this entity, and then there's one with the characters, and they're both interesting on the same level. But then when these two narratives clash, it just feels uneven to me. It feels like they put more to one side and not to the other, right? The balance of it was off, I felt, by the end. And so by the end, I understood it, because it's like a curse. That's all I will say. It's like, it's a curse, right? It's a curse if you behave a certain way and you don't treat it right. You know, you got to be, as what Jake Gyllenhaal said in Nocturnal Animals.
You have to be careful with it.
And if you're not, well, then bad things will happen. So I understood it, but it just felt like a generic horror movie by the end, where at the beginning it seemed like a very deep psychological horror story, like American Psycho, and then it turned into some supernatural stuff that was interesting, but I didn't care by the end because it felt generic. The verdict I will give for Velvet Buzzsaw, directed by Dan Gilroy. I will say that this movie, I like it. I like it a lot. But it's not a great movie. I don't love it. It's not necessarily a good movie, but it's definitely not garbage. And it's better than okay. I like it. But I feel at the very beginning of Velvet Buzzsaw is the most interesting. And then it hits the middle section of the movie in Act 2 where they reveal this entity. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I'm still invested. I'm invested in the characters and I'm invested in this entity. And then the movie progresses. And then by the third act, I feel like there's a balancing act. Certain things fall apart where I'm not invested in the characters' development anymore. But then by the end, with all these ideas, it just kind of fizzles and turns into some just generic slapstick horror movie. So I like the movie. It's got some really good themes and elements. And, you know, the directing's great. The acting's great. The editing is great. But the story has interesting elements, but it plays a balancing act by the end, and it just fizzles away. And that's all I have to say. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.